Heating and Air Sub is who we also hire to run the vents for your bath fans, your Ventahoods, your dryers. Regarding the bath fans, you need to find out some specifications on the fan. Normally, if you're going to have a fan by itself, it only requires a 4-inch vent pipe. If you're going to have a fan-like combination, it normally requires a 6-inch vent pipe. You need to do a little homework, and if you're going to have the electrician furnish these vents, check with your electrician and ask them what size vent pipe you need, and the Heating and Air Sub will run the vent pipe for this future fan or fan-like combination. On your Ventahood, it's very important that you find out the specification on the Ventahood as to what size pipe is required. You do not want to put a 6-inch pipe up there and find out the Ventahood needs an 8-inch pipe, because a lot of times they'll install it and then they'll put a reducer reducing that 8-inch down to a 6-inch, and it's not going to work properly. So find out the specs on a Ventahood and tell your Heating and Air Sub that's the size pipe they need to install. On the dryer vent, I really like these little boxes. You'll see one at 24/7 that they have now that they can recess into the wall, and it enables you to hook up the dryer vent without it just sticking out from the wall like so many of them do, causing the dryer to stick about 6 to 8 inches away from the wall. It's just a really nice little box, and it makes it a lot easier to hook up the dryer. And you'll see examples of this at 24/7, and your Heating and Air Sub can furnish and install those little boxes for a dryer vent. The Heating and Air Sub is who we normally hire to run all the gas lines in the home. And regarding the gas line, you want to know every place you want a gas line. You may want an outside grill. You may have several fireplaces. You may have a gas cooktop. And, several other things where you may need gas requirements, and you need to know this so you can tell the Heating and Air Sub. And sometimes the Heating and Air Sub will sub out to a separate sub that does the gas line, and you need to know how many outlets that you're going to, require. Also, what I really like on the gas line is in an area I will designate as a mechanical room, and if you may have a mechanical room, I want a central location where all the gas lines come to, and there's a cutoff. So if I need to cut off a grill or a fireplace or whatever, I can go to that central location and I can cut it off without necessarily having to cut off at that fireplace, at that grill, which may or may not be that convenient to get to. Where it's real convenient if you're in a central location in a mechanical room. That may cost you a little more money, but I think it's a nice item. If you have any of these thermostatically controlled roof fans, which I prefer over the wind turbine kind that you'll see on homes, then the Heating and Air Sub is who we normally hire to install these thermostatically controlled roof fans. And they will also furnish them. I mentioned several times in the course about using a soffit vent and a ridge vent as being the cheapest way to vent your attic and the most efficient. That is true. However, on some roof designs, such as a hip roof you'll see on a country French home, there may be a lot of soffit, but if you look at that roof design, there may not be very much ridge for a ridge vent. And that air can only be pulled out if it can pull it in, or vice versa. So if you don't have enough ridge vent to accommodate all the soffit vent, you're not getting the full effect of getting that heat out of the attic or moist air. So if that's the case, what we'll do is we will add these thermostatically controlled roof fans to compensate for the fact that we don't have enough ridge vent. And you can do a little bit of homework to make sure you have the right amount of or the right volume of air circulating through a thermostatically controlled roof fan to satisfy what you need. You may need two of them. However, if you got plenty of ridge, which gives you plenty of ridge vent, then I don't think you're going to need any thermostatically controlled roof fans. I want to remind you to go back and review what I said when we're doing the drawings, the information I gave you there regarding the heating and air system. Just review that. And at this point, you're now ready to have your heating and air inspection. And about this same time, while the heating and air sub is winding up, you will have the electrician on the job to do all the electrical wiring. And even though you may have an electrical plan showing the location of all your lights, switches, and outlets, the only way to get this just right is for you to physically walk through the home with the electrician. And this is very time consuming, because some of these switches, for example, you may not be able to locate them exactly where it's shown on the drawing. And so you're going to be making decisions on moving a switch, or maybe moving a light, or moving an outlet. And this is the only way to get things just right. For example, you'll walk into a room and you'll envision cutting on a light. And if there's another door that leaves the room, you'll think, well, I don't want to come back over here to cut the light off, so I'd like to have a switch over on the other side of the room to cut the light on and off if I'm leaving. And this is the only way to get it just right. For example, where you've got computers or stereo equipment, you may want more than just one outlet. The only way you're going to get this just right is for you to physically walk through the home with the electrician. And again, this is very time consuming, but it's time well spent. The electrician will be running wires all through the home. They'll be installing all your outlet boxes, all your light boxes, and where you have a real heavy chandelier and or rotating ceiling fan, you need to tell the electrician this, and instead of putting a plastic box, they'll use a metal box and they'll brace it real good. But let's assume that dead center of a room, you want a light, and dead center of a room is a floor joist or a ceiling joist. Well, if you put that box on the bottom of a floor joist or ceiling joist, it is thicker than drywall. It would hang down below the drywall. It wouldn't look very good. That's why they make these little pancake boxes that are the same thickness as drywall, so you can get your lighting anywhere you desire. Be conscious of your outlets on where you're locating them. You want to think about the kind of base molding you're going to have. If you're going to have real wide base molding, you may want to move that outlet box up so it's not hitting that base molding. Or in some of the main parts of the home, you may want to lower that outlet box down and cut it into the base molding, which costs more money. But a lot of people like that look, and what a lot of times we'll do in a large home is in the main rooms, the foyer, the family room, the dining room, we'll cut that outlet in the wide base molding and maybe a master bedroom, but then all the other secondary rooms and everything, we will raise the outlet up above the base mold and we'll not cut it in because it's cheaper. Another thing I want to mention is that a lot of people in a master bathroom, for example, they'll put a decorative chandelier in the master bath, which, really looks great. One thing you've got to be conscious of is how far that light fixture is from a tub, like a Whirlpool tub or a garden tub. That's a code issue, and I just want you to be aware of it when you're thinking about putting a decorative chandelier, for example, in a master bathroom. In the garage, the electrician will install outlets in the ceiling for your garage door openers. And many times it's the electrician that will run some low voltage wiring from the garage doors over to a wall where you plan to have switches for the garage doors to raise them up and down. and it's usually the electrician that will run that low voltage wire for the garage doors. They'll also install all the boxes for your exterior lights. The electrician's going to need to know whether you're going to have brick or siding or stucco. And the electrician will install all the outlets for your flood lighting on the exterior of the home. As I mentioned earlier in the program, I'm not wild about having motion detectors on the floodlights. What I like to do is I will have like a switch maybe at the front door to cut on the front of the home. I may have a switch at the back to cut on the rear of the home. Maybe a switch at the garage to cut on the garage area. And then in the master bedroom, I'll have a switch that cuts them all on. So if I hear the bushes rattling at night, I can cut on all the floodlights from the master bedroom without having to go into the foyer or the kitchen or another rear door somewhere. These are things you want to think about. Hopefully you thought about them when you were putting your plans together. The electrician can furnish your bath fans, and you may specify a very quiet, more expensive bath fan. You know, in some cases, a loud bath fan doesn't bother me, but like in the master bath and stuff like this, it would get on my nerves. And so in an area like that, I would spend money for a nice, quiet bath fan. But you want to specify this to the electrician, and they can furnish them. And they are the ones, when they install them, they'll hook the vent pipe that was supplied by the heating and air sub, they'll hook it to the bath fan, whether it be a fan by itself or a fan like combination. The electrician will furnish and install all the cans for the recessed lighting. And on the recessed lighting, it's pretty much standard now that all the recessed lighting cans are what we call IC cans, which I think stands for insulation contact. It used to be on the recessed cans, we used to have to leave insulation away from them. We couldn't touch them with insulation, and it was a major source of air infiltration. But now the recessed cans are what they call IC cans, and you just want to verify that's even true for your area, and that way you can cover them and push insulation right up next to them, and there's no issues with it. Again, you want to be aware, hopefully this is shown on the drawings, where you plan to put the control panel for a security system, where you plan to put the central vacuum system, where you plan to put the control panel for an intercom system. Because what the electrician is going to need to do is run a wire to those locations so you'll be able to install those units. You may have to get some specifications to make sure you do have the right size wire for that central vacuum unit or for that intercom system or security system. The electrician, even if your security system includes smoke detectors, many times you're required to still have the electrician install smoke detectors in the home, and the electrician will furnish and install these. If you're going to have an intercom system, most intercom systems will have a unit at the front door, which acts like a doorbell also. You can push a button and it will ring some chimes, and then you can answer the intercom from inside the home. If you're not going to have an intercom system that has a built-in doorbell, then you'll hire the electrician to install a doorbell, and what they'll do is they'll run the wire from the front door to where some chimes are going to be in the home, and they'll put the button on at a later date. But the electrician can do this if you're not going to have an intercom system. Your electrician will install the service panel, the circuit breaker panels where you cut your circuit breakers on and off. In a smaller home, they may install a 150 amp service panel. I would recommend you spend the additional money and go to at least a 200 amp panel. And that way, if you wanted to add on to the home or finish off a basement or something, you've got room to grow. You'd be very limited with a 150 amp service panel. Now, for those of you getting into larger homes, you're going to have way more than a 200 amp panel. You may have a 400 amp panel or even more. May have several 400 amp panels. But the electrician should be able to calculate what you're going to need. If you have any questions about this, you can get with a power company, and your power company would probably be glad to do these calculations for free, showing you how much service you're going to need for the home. You're probably going to need to tell the electrician where that ground rod is that's sticking up from the footing through the foundation wall, where it's located, so he'll know where to run his grounding wire from the service panel over to this grounding rod. And hopefully you didn't let the carpenter cut it off, cover it up, and you keep a close eye on where that ground rod is during the construction of the home. In the master bath especially, you know, I like to keep a house kind of cool at night. In the wintertime, I just like sleeping when it's kind of almost cold in the room. But when I get up in the morning and I go into the master bath, I like the master bath to be warm. And what we used to do is we'd put heat lamps up there, or we'd put a little sidewall furnace that you would cut on to kind of heat that room up by itself. What's really, really, really nice is to have a heated tile floor, which your ceramic tile sub will install. But on your heated tile floor, you need to think about where you're going to have a thermostat for the heated tile floor, and you will tell the electrician this, and he will run a wire over to where that thermostat is going to be located. Now, you may need to do a little homework and find out some specs on the system you're going to use so you'll have the right size wire. And then from that location of the thermostat wire, the electrical wire that controls it, the ceramic tile sub is going to be running a line from this heated floor pad up to that thermostat location. And what the electrician needs to do is put a piece of conduit in the wall that will go down the wall, and it will just turn out right at floor level where the ceramic tile is going. And what this is this a pipe that the ceramic tile sub can fish that wire up through. It's only like a little 1/2 inch piece of conduit, and he'll fish that wire up through there, and it will come out the end of that conduit where the thermostat's going to be, and the electrician will actually take the thermostat and wire it up to the electrical wire and the wire that connects it to the heat pad. But the electrician will install this little piece of conduit to fish that wire through. If you're going to have a built-in sauna in the home, you need to get the specifications on what type of wiring you need and where you need wiring. And what you'll normally do is provide a wire for the control unit. And then in most saunas, they'll let you install any type of lighting that you want in there. Most people will put in recessed cans, but you could put a fixture or wall sconces or whatever. But you need to make these decisions so the electrician can wire the sauna the way you want it. If you're going to have a nice home theater, you're going to need to get all the specifications on this, because there's whoever's going to do the home theater for you, they may require a certain number of outlets, a certain amount of wiring, and you need to know this so you can have the right amount of wiring there by the electrician to run this home theater. On a 2-story home, what I recommend you do while the electrician's there, he's the best one to do this, is from the attic to the crawl space or basement, have the electrician run 2 or 3 runs of conduit. It could be like 1-inch conduit that goes all the way from the attic to the basement. And the reason I want you to do this, and he'll find a common wall to run this through. And the reason I want you to do this is in the future, if something comes out, the latest and greatest, whatever that you want for the home, and you want to install it in your home, it's a lot easier to now run any wiring you need from the basement all the way up to the attic, so you can access the second floor without having to run it through the home, cutting out drywall, trying to fish that wire from the basement up to the second floor level. So you run those 2 or 3 pieces of conduit, like 1-inch or 2-inch conduit, through a central location, have the electrician do this, and it'll help you later if you want to add anything to the home. While the electrician is there, you want to tell the electrician that you would like for him to prepare the home to install temporary service in the near future. And he'll know what you're doing. What's going to happen is you're going to apply for temporary service, and they're going to hook the meter to the home, and you're going to be able to access a couple of 3 or 4, how many you want, outlets in the home. They're going to be hot. You're going to be able to disconnect from the temporary power pole, and it's going to make life a lot easier on running tools in the home and checking things in the home, and possibly cutting on heat in the home in the wintertime. So tell the electrician to prepare things so you can apply for temporary service before the home is finished, and have hot wiring in the home before the home is finished. And he'll know what to do, and he'll know what you're talking about. The electrician is now ready to get an electrical inspection. And in some areas, you will find they'll do all the inspections at one time. That, I just really hate that. And I don't see how in the world one inspector knows all this stuff. But I've been in areas where, they say, no, we just come out one time and do everything at one time. What an aggravation. But anyway, if that's the case, it is what it is. But in a lot of places, they'll have separate inspectors for the plumbing, the heating and air, and the electrical. So go ahead and get your electrical roughing inspection. As the electrician is winding up, you can have 1 or more subs on the job doing all the low voltage. Now, some people will hire their electrician to do some of these things. But I found that the people out there that do low voltage, and that's all they specialize in, I really like dealing with them as opposed to the electrician, because some of the electricians are not really up to speed on the latest, greatest thing to do. And it's an aggravation to be, repairing things through the electrician, where if you deal with a low voltage sub, and some of these subs do everything, or you may deal with 3 or 4 different low voltage subs on the items I have listed here to handle these different items. I just think it makes the job a lot nicer and neater. And you've got people you can turn to, and they know the systems, and they're a little more up to speed on some of this stuff than I feel like the electrician is. But now it's when you want to install like your central vacuum system. On the security system, I will say on the security system, even though the low voltage sub may be capable of running all the lines for security wires, I'd rather you go ahead and decide on a company you're going to deal with, because I've seen situations where a low voltage sub would run all the wiring for an alarm system, and then you'll hire a certain company and they'll come out and say, no, this is not the way we do it, and they will go ahead and install their stuff. And it's just a hassle. So whoever you're going to hire to do the security system, they normally like to install their own wires. You could go with a wireless system. You could check into that. Most people like it to be hardwired, and let that security company do that. You may have an intercom system. You'll install all the phone jacks. And on the phone lines, at this recording, what you want to use is a Cat 5 phone wire. I understand there may be even a Cat 6 now. With all the electronics we have and the faxes and the computers and everything, the old phone wires are just not adequate. So you want at least a Cat 5 wire, and check, because they may have even upgraded to what is called a Cat 6. So do a little homework on that. By the time you hear this recording, it may be something else. But make sure you have the latest and greatest. If you're going to be running any wires for speakers throughout the home, or especially at a home theater, you need to do some homework. I've seen people go to the trouble of running what they thought were speaker wires, And then when they get their speakers in there, the wiring they install was just not adequate enough for the size speakers they had, and it was just a waste of time and money. So make sure you know a little something about the speakers you want, and make sure you have an adequate size wire for those speakers. Think about anything you need for your computer systems that you may want to install in the home at this point. You want to install all the outlets for your cable TVs, so you want to know where that's located. And then, of course, if you're going with a home theater, I really hope if you're not dealing with someone that's all they're going to do is a home theater, then you're real clear in your mind where you want everything and what you want, so you get the right amount of wiring and low voltage wiring and speaker wires in that area for the home theater. A lot of this stuff is going to have owner manuals that come with it, installation manuals that are all over the house. I want you to go through, pick up all these manuals, save them. You're going to file them away. If you don't, they're going to wind up in the trash. So pick up all these installation manuals, and it's going to cover warranty information, who you call, and such as this, and you want to save all this material and file it away. After you finish up the low voltage, you can now have your framing carpenter back on the job to do any miscellaneous framing and what we call furring in. And you will probably have to pay your framer additional money for most of the items I'm going to be talking about here. In that the framer is going to come in, and any place like the heating and air sub had a pipe coming through the floor going out the ceiling, out the roof to vent off fumes. We call this a vent pipe. Well, there that vent pipe is in all of its glory. It is no one person's responsibility to cover this vent pipe up. So what you do is you hire the framer to build a box around this vent pipe so you can cover it with drywall. We call that furring in. But it's kind of like square dancing. You can fur in, fur out, fur up, fur down. But any place you have these little areas where you need to box them in, you may have a steel I-beam that you need to box around so you can cover it up with drywall. We call that furring in. And now you know what that's for. Excuse the pun. Now is when you want to go through and check for all the dead wood, and you want to check on any fire blocking you're going to need. I want to encourage you to look at that article at 24/7 on fire blocking. It's going to do a great job explaining where you normally will need fire blocking and good ways of doing it. And I'd like for you to be aware of this, because if you don't take care of this fire blocking now, it could be a problem later on trying to get your inspection and to try and add it later. And one place this is going to be coming up is like in a terrace level, a basement terrace level. You've got your heating and air duct work, your heating and air system hanging in the ceiling along with plumbing pipes. And now you may want to go in and build a false ceiling that goes below that. Well, when you build that false ceiling below that piping, you need to be conscious of the fire blocking where that ceiling attaches to the wall. And that article at 24/7 is going to explain that to you. And the carpenter that's going to be doing that ceiling for you will also be handling this fire block. The prefab stairs. A lot of times you got to build, fill in walls underneath the stairs. Your framer's going to do that now. If you have any recessed pocket doors, now is when you're going to install those recessed pocket door frames. I normally will not have the framer do this. They're not the best person to do it. What I'll do many times is the person I'm going to hire to install my doors, like the guy that did the exterior doors, a lot of those guys will do pocket door frames. Your trim carpenter that you're going to hire to do the interior trim, that would be a good person to come in and install the pocket door frame that you'll do at this time, because you're going to cover it with drywall. And I want you to be sure to use a quality pocket door frame and not some of those cheaper builder grade frames that they have on the market, because one thing you don't want is problems with a pocket door frame. And you're going to go through and just install any miscellaneous blocking and framing. Two things I would advise here. One is to get your drywall sub out there and to have the drywall sub walk through the home, because they've got a great eye on knowing where they need dead wood to brace the drywall. Now, if the dead wood's not there, when they come in and start installing that drywall, those guys that install, they are going like wild men. And they'll put it up there, and even if there should have been dead wood and there's not, they will still install it, and then it's going to be a problem later. So get your drywall sub out there, have them walk through the home and see if there's any dead wood that needs installed, and they can point it out to you, and you can therefore point it out to the framer, or the framer can be with you. Because a lot of times this dead wood will be knocked off the wall by the plumber or heating and air sub when they're installing their system. I would also advise you to now get the trim carpenter out there. You will probably have to pay the trim carpenter a little extra money, but just to walk through the home to see if there's any place they notice where you need any additional blocking, or if there's a crooked stud that was missed and they need to fix and repair a stud. Because they're going to be putting up all this trim work, and they kind of know what gives them a problem. And they may see several things that need correcting before you cover it up. If you can get all this stuff done now, oh man, it makes life so much easier and the job just goes smoother. And this is a little extra money well spent to make sure this is handled. Especially where you have cabinets, you want those walls nice and straight. Those corners nice and square, nice 90-degree angles. Because when you put those countertops in there, they act like a straight edge, and they're going to show a 1/4 inch like a country mile. Because I really detest squeaky floors, and even though I told you to glue and ring shank nail the subflooring down, while the framer's there, I will hire them. It doesn't cost that much. And I'll take drywall screws, or you could take, other kind of screws, wood screws, and I will have the framer go through the home, and I will have him screw the subflooring down with those screws like about every 12, 16 inches on center, just as an added precaution to minimize squeaks. Now, because the home's been sitting there for a little while and you've been doing all this work, you can walk through it now and you may notice a squeak. You want to get that squeak definitely handled now. But just as an added precaution, I'll hire the framer to go through and put down an additional screw about 12, 16 inches on center on all the subflooring, just to help me minimize having a squeaky floor, which is such a hassle. And then, because people then walk through your home and it goes squeak, squeak, and they think cheap, cheap. Where the plumber drilled any holes, from the first floor to the second floor to run a pipe, where the electrician drilled any holes to run wiring from the first floor to the second floor. In these areas, in many cases where you have an inspection department, they require that you put fire caulking to seal up those pipes or wires, so that if you have a fire in a wall, it doesn't give it easy access and ventilation to move up to the next floor level. But not only will this retard any spreading of fire, it's going to minimize air spreading through the home, and it's going to make your home tighter, more energy efficient. So even if it wasn't for fire reasons, I'd do it for energy efficiency reasons. But the person that can normally do this fire caulking is your insulation subcontractor. And they can come out now and do all the fire caulking that the inspector normally will want to see before he does the rough end building. You now want to clean the home out real good. Get it nice and clean. And then you want to go through and either with a video camera, a camcorder, you want to record every wall, ceiling in your home. Or you can go through with a digital camera and take pictures of every wall, ceiling in the home. Now, what I do is I use a digital camera, and what I'll do is I'll walk in a room, and on the floor, I have written on the floor what the room is, like bedroom 2. And I'll take a picture of bedroom 2. Take a picture of that drawing on the floor. Then I'll go in a clockwise or counterclockwise position, decide which way you want to go, and counterclockwise, I'll shoot a picture of every wall in that room, and then I'll shoot pictures of the ceiling. And the reason I do it this way is when you're unloading your digital camera, it's going to keep those photos in sequence. So that when you come to the photo that says bedroom 2, you're going to know that the next photo is the wall beginning, let's say, at the door and going clockwise or counterclockwise, and then you're going to see the ceiling. Because I want to see where all those wires, where all those pipes, where all those recessed cans and outlets and switches are located. Because so many times, so many of these items get covered up by the drywall. And it can be a problem for you. And by looking at these photos, you can find these items, not to mention in the future, if you've got any issues, you'll be able to see what is in the guts of the wall. And you'll do this for every room, every hallway, every area of your home. Once you have completed all your rough-in inspections, you, the builder, will now call the building inspector. And provided you've passed all other inspections, if you pass the building inspection, they will now authorize you to install all the insulation. Different cities and different counties will do it a little differently, so you got to find out how they do it. As I mentioned, in some cities and counties, they come out one time right now and they do all of it. Plumbing, heating and air, electrical, building, all at one time, which I do not like, as I mentioned, but it is what it is. But in many cases, you'll deal with 3 separate inspections: plumbing, heating, air, electrical, possibly even low voltage, and then you'll have the building inspector get out there, and what they want to do is verify that nothing that has been cut by the heating and air sub or the plumber has, they want to make sure it has been repaired. So when you pass this rough-in building inspection, he or she will now authorize you to install all the insulation. Also, when you pass this rough-in building inspection, you can now release that money you were holding on the framing carpenter as, some kind of retainer. On the installation, you will be dealing with a subcontractor. They will furnish the labor and material. One thing I would recommend, of course, if you had the money to do the foam, I just love the foam. It is great. It's a great soundproofer. It's just tremendously energy efficient. Oh, wow. I love the foam. Unfortunately, I can't work it in my budget, especially on a large home. If you've got a little more money than most people and want to do the foam, what a great way to go. I love the foam. I will, in the walls, on the exterior walls, I like to use, instead of the fiberglass bats, I like to use the blown-in cellulose. I think the cellulose does a much tighter job around plumbing pipes, outlets, than the fiberglass insulation. So they will blow the cellulose in the wall, which is nothing more than ground up newspaper. One area I do not blow in the cellulose in the walls is like between the first and second floor, there's a little gap there where the floor joist or floor truss is. If they blow the cellulose in that location, it's just nasty looking. And I don't like that. So what I'll have them do is in that little gap between the first and second floor, between the floor joist, the floor trusses, I have them blow the foam in that area. I do not install the ceiling insulation at this point. I do not blow that in. That's going to come later. However, up in that attic, you've got a walkway. And if they go ahead and hang the drywall, you have now sealed up that area under the walkway and you cannot insulate it, and that's a void in the insulation, which is not good. So underneath that walkway, what I'll do there is I'll put fiberglass bats underneath the walkway before they hang the drywall. If on a one-story home or on one level you have two zones, let's say you're separating your living area from your sleeping area. If it's on the same level, you want to insulate the wall between those two zones. You don't have to insulate between the first and second floor, but on that wall between the two zones on the same level, you want to insulate that wall. And when I'm talking about zones, I'm talking about heating and air zones. A very cheap and inexpensive way of soundproofing is to insulate around a bathroom, a laundry room, around the master bedroom. And so a lot of times I'll insulate around those areas as just a cheap form of soundproofing. Around your doors and windows, we used to spray foam around the doors and windows in that gap between the door or window jamb and the rough opening. But the foam would spread out so much that it would warp the jamb and create a problem opening or closing a door or window. So we got away from the foam and we went back to cramming insulation in that joint. We call it chinking insulation in that little joint. Now they've come out with a foam that is specifically for doors and windows, so it doesn't expand too much, warping the jamb. So I've gone back to that foam and I really like the foam. It does a great job sealing that little joint up between the door or window jamb and the rough opening stud or trimmer, whatever you want to call it. If you have a basement or terrace level and or a crawl space, especially a crawl space, you will insulate the floor above the crawl space. Check with your city or county inspector if you've got a basement to find out what their requirements are about insulating the basement. A lot of times if you insulate the basement walls, you don't have to insulate between the basement and the first floor. If you're not going to insulate the walls, some cities and counties will require you to insulate between the first and second floor. But if you have a crawl space, you will definitely insulate the floor. And what we normally do there is we will put fiberglass bats up between the floor joist and or floor trusses. Now, if you cram that fiberglass bat up there, then you need to put a piece of wire up there that's going to hold it in place. We just call it's called a tiger teeth or tiger claw, or just an insulation clamp. I forget exactly what the technical name is. You can see it at 24/7. And they'll put that piece of wire up there to hold that insulation in place so over time it's not just falling down. Make sure that's done. If you have a crawl space also, you're going to have a dirt floor in most cases. You may want to hire the insulation sub to do this. If not, get some labor out there to do this, but you want to cover that dirt with a layer of 6 mil poly. And what that plastic is going to do is trap any moisture like dew seeping up out of the ground, which could get up into your insulation. Because when the insulation gets damp, the efficiency of the insulation, we call the R factor, drastically decreases. So you don't want moisture dampness to get up into that insulation, and so you will cover that dirt or ground with 6 mil poly. You could hire the insulation sub to do this for you while they're down there, or you could get additional labor, just day labor to come over there. You furnish the 6 mil poly and have them do it. You will now get an insulation inspection, and when you get the insulation inspection, they will now authorize you to cover everything up.